So I bet you know this feeling. You wake up early on a Saturday morning, it's your first weekend off in months. You are pumped to go catch some fish, so you roll out of bed, you make your coffee, and you look out the window, and to your horror, the wind is absolutely blowing. Trees are moving side to side and you're discouraged, but you convince yourself, you know what, it's okay. The wind's probably not blowing from a direction that's right into my fishing spot, right? But you get to the lake and it is. The wind is just gassing right into where you were hoping to fish. And so under these conditions, how do you read your body of water? Which lure should you select? And how does wind affect bass fishing? My name's Tyler and let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all.
I can't believe what I just caught.
Yes! Well, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to Tyler's Reel Fishing. My goal here on this channel is to help you guys become better bass anglers and catch more fish. So if you're all about that, hit the subscribe button. So as bass fishermen, we deal with conditions all the time. We deal with weather conditions, water conditions, barometric pressure conditions, and how many other anglers have been on the body of water, the pressure conditions. And I think the mark of a mature bass fisherman is somebody who knows how to read the conditions to select the right lures, the right locations, and catch fish because of it. And so we're going to talk about how wind affects bass fishing. Now, of course, an easy answer to the question of what does wind do to bass fishing for many anglers, regardless of skill level, is wind makes fishing harder, especially if the wind gets up into the 10, 15, 20 miles per hour, and thus makes it harder to cast, makes it harder to fish from the bank, to keep your boat or your kayak in one place. Wind can make bass fishing harder. But besides that general theme, let's talk about three main things the wind does that can either hurt or help your bass fishing success. Starting with number one, wind creates current. Some of my favorite bodies of water ever to fish are ones that have current flowing through them. So for smallmouth bass, the Great Lakes, St. Clair, the St. Lawrence River all have some form of current flowing through them that kind of pushes bait fish all around and really gets the ecosystem moving and helps to create a healthy fishery. The Tennessee River Association, so Gunnersville, Pickwick, Chickamauga, all those lakes have tons of current that flows through them, which has caused them to be some of the best bass fishing lakes in the country over the past 50 years. And sometimes rivers, creeks, and streams can be some of the best places to find fish because they have current. Current supports a healthy ecosystem. So believe it or not, when wind blows on your body of water, even on a relatively small lake like I'm on today, it does create current. It creates what's called wind current. So when the wind blows, it picks up some water on the top of the water surface and of course moves it as the wind blows, and that slowly starts to move the water that's underneath. Now, wind current can manifest itself in good ways and bad ways. So let's start with the good. Wind current can be great around what's called a choke point and around points. So a choke point is like a bridge where two points come together and kind of creates a small section in between two bigger sections of a body of water. It's called a choke point because you're like putting somebody in a chokehold. If you have wind that is blowing into a choke point, into a bridge, you're going to have current that is forced into a smaller section that's going to cause that current stream to be stronger in that area, thus making fish want to be there because it's funneling all the bait fish, all the entire ecosystem through that one area. And big points as well. I'm talking about points you can see and underwater points. Fish are on those anyways, but oftentimes when you have wind causing a current even in the slightest bit, it will cause those fish to turn on and feed. So that's the good current. Here's the bad. Current naturally moves what is under the water around. That's what causes the ecosystem to get stirred up. And so if you're in shallow water that's not a hard bottom, so a gravel, a rock, a sand, if you're in a muddy area, oftentimes current is not a good thing because it will stir up that mud. Just like if you're on the bass boat and I go with my trolling motor through a really shallow area and I look behind me, I have kicked up a huge dust cloud because it is a muddy, soft bottom, and current is not good for that. Bass don't want to be in all kinds of muddy, murky water, especially when there's clear water elsewhere. In my experience, bass like to be in clear water, and if they have a choice, they're going to be in that clear water. So current around shallow, muddy stuff is not good. I'm sure if you fish long enough, you've seen your areas get muddied up by the wind, and that is the bad type of current. The second thing that wind can do is it can actually change the depth of the water in your lake or pond. And I don't mean that it can like make all the water evaporate and lower the water level, but with enough wind and strong wind, it can actually move water from one section of the lake to another and kind of make that section higher. As the wind blows, especially if it's strong enough, it will force water from one section of a lake to the other and raise that water level. Now, this seems to manifest itself most in big bodies of water. So if you're in a small pond and you worry about the wind, making one section higher water and making one section lower water, you're not really going to have to worry about that. But if you're in a big body of water, and let's say you hope to catch them on docks, and the wind is blowing from the south, which means the south side of the bank will be protected, the north side will be blowing, but those docks on the south side, especially on a big lake, will not have as much water underneath them as they would have on a calm day or a north wind. So it's going to be easier to fish a windy day on docks or shallow cover on the south side if the wind is blowing from the south, but you may actually have less water depth, and it's not usually very drastic, maybe a few inches, but it can cause fish to vacate an area if there's not the same amount of water that they're used to. So wind can move water from one side of the lake to the other. And the last thing that wind can do is it can move aquatic vegetation. I have seen this so many times all throughout the country as I've traveled and fished. If you are fishing any kind of shallow water, let's say grass fishing for the topwater frog, vibrating jig, swim jig, and the grass is not super stuck to the bottom, maybe it's less healthy grass, or maybe it's a floating type of grass like hyacinth or pondweed that is easily blown around by the wind. And I have a story to share with you guys. My freshman year of college, I was fishing a college Bassmaster tournament on the Atchafalaya Basin in Louisiana. My partner Josh and I found a spot in practice that was just loaded with, good sized bass for Louisiana, 2 to 4 pound bass and redfish. We were catching both species in the same exact spot in some big old bayou lake down there. I forgot the name of it. One side of this bayou was full of just hyacinth and tons of floating grass, but that wasn't the area we were catching fish in. We were catching fish in the kind of more plain bank just around some shallow hydrilla. And so we thought, we have this tournament in the bag. We're gonna catch a giant sack of fish on day one. Well, the night before the tournament, a practical tornado hurricane came through, and I don't know which direction the wind was blowing, but it was blowing from just the right direction to completely mess up our area. We got there and we couldn't even get to the area we were casting to because there was so much water hyacinth that had been pushed from one section of the bayou to the other. And so keep that in mind if you are fishing shallow vegetation, especially stuff that can float and floats around your body of water, is that wind will move vegetation around. Wind will also move vegetation that is underneath the water. So here in Minnesota, I love flipping grass, but the grass bite is not very good when it's windy, and that is because the grass, instead of being stalks up, growing vertically in the air, in the water column toward the sky, the wind causes that to shift over. And so you might think in your mind, well, that's great because then you can actually punch that grass. But sometimes the fish just don't like that. They want a mat of grass, not stalks that are hanging over. And so just be aware, your body of water might be different than ones that I fish. It might be different than ones that people in the comment section fish. But wind will move aquatic vegetation, and so be aware of that because your fish might not be biting in the same way on a calm day in grass as in a windy day with grass. So one more question remains, and that is, what lures should I throw? What locations should I go to if it's windy? You show up to your pond and you know what? It's gassing. There's really nowhere you can throw. It's so hard to throw your standard Texas rig worms because you get them up in the air and they're basically all the way back to you because of how strong the wind is. Well, in my opinion, reaction baits are the best bait you can throw in the wind. So your spinner baits, your vibrating jigs, your lipless crankbaits, your square bill crankbaits, and especially around rock. I tend to gravitate towards harder bottoms when it's windy, so I'm not going to throw a frog when it's windy. I'm not going to throw usually a swim jig when it's windy. I'm going to throw more vibration-y type lures that I can feel, or I'm going to go out deep. Sometimes when it is windy, it just totally wrecks the shallow bite. Now I'm going to talk to you pond anglers for a second because you can't really fish deep. So what's the best thing for you to do? Well, if you have a calm side of the pond, you're going to want to go to that. And if the wind is not too drastic, you're going to want to fish the windy side, even if it means you don't have as good of a feel of what's down there. You can't quite tell if your bait's hit the bottom. You can't tell if you're getting a bite. It can be tough. But if you have a little bit of wind in your body of water, it's going to make fishing better 99% of the time, up to a certain point. When the wind is above 10 to 12 to 15 miles an hour, that's when fishing starts to get tough. And as much as I hate to say this, if you're in a body of water that you really can't get away from the wind and you fish for 20 minutes and you just can't get a bite because you can't feel your lures, that might just be a day that you go work on tackle inside. And I know I never like to say that, but sometimes wind can be that debilitating. Wind, just like I had today. Yeah, come on. Hello, chill. Woo. Gee. I was trying so hard to catch fish on a frog and on a vibrating jig today around shallow grass, and even with my skill level of casting distance, casting accuracy, casting power, I could not get a good cast out there and definitely couldn't feel my lure. So wind today for me was debilitating until I went out deep and fished a heavy football jig, a drop shot, and a deep crankbait. There's one. There's one. Oh, he feels big. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Woo-hoo. There we go, boys and girls. That right there is how you start it. Stinking 4-pounder. 5XD to the face. Absolutely stinking beautiful. Let's go. As soon as I tried that deep bite, I was catching fish after fish because those shallow fish that were probably around the shallow grass, around the docks, if it is blowing wind, those fish don't want to stay there. They're going to slide into deeper water. And that spot that I'm fishing, as you're seeing on the screen, is right next to some shallow water on an underwater point. And man, it was loaded with fish. Bring it up in here. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Beautiful fish right there on the Outcast tackle. Touchdown elite jig. Thing gets him good. Let's go. 3-pounder. He looked so much bigger when he jumped. Got him. There we go. That one feels good. What do we got? Oh, yes. Oh, he came up fast. He came up fast. Oh my gosh. And Spot Lock is doing me dirty. Spot Lock, what are you doing? What are you doing? Get in here, baby. Yes. There we go. 3-pounder. Beautiful. Football jig. Got him. Thank you, my friend. There's one. Oh, yes. Let's go, baby. Let's go, biggin. Get him in. Oh, baby. Yes. The old Splash Town. Yes, sir. Ow, ow. He got my nuts. He got me in the nuts. Beautiful fish right there on the touchdown. Wow. Talk about 8. He ate it. The fish have gotten smart here, I think. And if they've gotten smart, that means I gotta pull out old Trusty. I gotta pull out the old tried and true. The old razzle dazzle. The drop shot. I knew it. I knew it. Old Trusty got it done. Old Trusty. Oh gosh. I'm about to sue this company. You're not even that big. Ah, got him. 2-pounder though. 2-pounder on the drop shot. Thank you, friend. There's one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is that bigger? You're feeling big. Not jumping yet. You can throw a drop shot in the wind, folks. I may have a pike. I don't know, we'll see. Whatever, no, it's bass. It's just a bass. Why are you not fighting anymore? Got him. Absolutely beautiful quality fish right there. My gosh. 3-pounder on the drop shot. Can't beat it, baby. So that is my video on how wind affects bass fishing. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, hit that subscribe button. Now I will leave 2 videos that are similar to this one that deal with how weather affects bass fishing up in these 2 corners right here. The longer y'all stay on my channel, the better it does in the algorithm. So I would really appreciate it if y'all would click one of those videos right there. My name's Tyler. As always, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next time right here on TRF.